Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Christy. I'm a homeschool mom to 3. Today we are in the forest and we're going to be talking about learning styles today. So I think knowing your children's learning style can be such a useful tool to use in your homeschool, because when you know how they learn, you can customize the way that you teach things to them so that they can get a better grasp of things, and it just makes things a little bit smoother knowing what their learning styles are. So your learning style is just the way that you process information and retain information the best. And there's a lot of different ways that people learn. And I've come to know what my kids' learning styles are just from the years of homeschooling them and observing them. The best way to determine your kids' learning styles is just by observing them. Observe them when you are doing lessons, how they learn, what makes those light bulbs turn on. Observe them in everyday life and in different situations and how they interact with others and their surroundings, because that can be helpful too. There are people out there that don't fully believe in catering and education to a specific learning style, and they believe in a more broad, wide and diverse education. And I am kind of in both camps. Like, I think there's a value in knowing learning styles, and I do cater a lot of their education to that because that's what they learn the best. But we also don't just use auditory resources for my auditory learner or visual resources for my visual learner. We definitely use all of the different kinds of resources and different ways of approaching a concept and topic. We are fully do that. And I definitely think that does create a really, really beautiful education. So I definitely believe in that too. So first I'm going to talk about my oldest daughter, who is 13 and an auditory learner. So auditory learners are really cool because they're like little sponges, and any information that they hear, they soak it up and they remember it quite well. Another really cool thing about auditory learners is that they are phenomenal storytellers, and they do really, really well with speaking. So I'm going to talk about some things I've noticed about my oldest daughter and kind of some tips when it comes to auditory learners. Tip number 1, utilize read-alouds. Read-alouds are a great way for auditory learners to learn because, like I said, they absorb what they're listening to. And you can use read-alouds with all different kinds of subjects. You can use it with history and science and language arts, and it just helps make things and concepts and topics come alive for them. Sometimes auditory learners aren't really a fan of reading actual books on their own, like in front of them. My daughter loves to read, so that's great, but a lot of auditory learners aren't a huge fan. So audiobooks are a really, really, really great resource to use with them because they can still take in what the story has to offer in the way that fits them best. Something that's pretty cool about read-alouds, though, is research shows that you as a parent, when you actually are the one reading aloud to them, they actually take in more information than if a stranger was doing it on an audiobook or a video. I mean, how cool is it that you as their parent have a more influential voice to them and that they can retain more when you're the one doing it? It's pretty cool. Another thing that I like to incorporate in our homeschool for my auditory learner is a lot of discussion-based and conversational-based learning. And so we have a lot of discussions about things, and I often will ask her comprehension questions or even like the short answer questions in her curriculum out loud, and I have her do it orally. She is way more articulate when she's speaking, and she will tell me everything she knows, and she knows so much just verbally. And she's not as strong in written responses. So I definitely put a higher value on what she can tell me she learned and knows rather than what she can actually like show me physically. That being said, I do believe kids need to learn how to write well and communicate that way. So I don't do away with all writing, but When we do have something that she has to do a written response for, a written answer, I do make sure that we have a discussion out loud first about what she's going to write. Because I find that her getting her thoughts out loud first really helps her in that process. Something else that's helpful for my auditory learner is reading the instructions aloud. And obviously when they are small, you're going to be doing that anyway. But my daughter's 13 and we're trying to foster some independence in her schoolwork, as you kind of do at that age, but I'm finding it a little bit challenging because she still likes me to sit there and read the instructions and the lesson and the questions out loud to her. So I'm trying to transition to her reading the instructions out loud herself. So she's still getting that audio that she needs, but it's herself and her voice reading it. And so I think that that's kind of the direction I'm moving in to help kind of get that independence. But just be aware that auditory learners may take a little bit longer to get to that more independent stage that you're looking for. Another cool, useful tool for auditory learners is using music and rhymes and cadence and poems and acronyms to remember things and facts. They just click and stick in their brain when they hear that music. They pick it up really easily. Schoolhouse Rocked. Who remembers that? Announce a person, place, or thing. Still in my head. The last thing I'm going to talk about for auditory learner is the fact that they need quiet spaces to focus and work. Sounds are very distracting to them. We're all sitting at the table and we're trying to do our subjects all together, and like she's doing her stuff and her brother and sister are doing their thing. It's way too distracting. She can't focus. So we always do her school in her room with her door closed, and that's just how it's got to be. They just need a quiet place. I also have a visual learner. My youngest is a visual and kinesthetic learner. She's kind of a bit of both. She's a bit young. She's in kindergarten, so it's a little hard to tell right now, but she definitely appreciates color in pictures and beautiful things, and she loves to draw and write and look at books, and pictures and videos are very engaging for her. What's cool about visual learners is they often have not necessarily a photographic memory, but like they remember things they see and they can visualize things really well. Something that you can incorporate for visual learners is definitely a visually pleasing curriculum. You want something that has color and art and pictures and is very pleasant to look at. They definitely appreciate and prefer that, and it helps engage them and keeps them from getting bored. If they have too plain of something that you're looking at, it can be kind of boring and they disengage a little bit. I also find with visual learners, and especially like the younger visual learner type, giving my daughter breaks and opportunities, incorporating a lot of like art projects or craft projects. She really enjoys that. She really likes opportunities to draw and write little stories, like little narrations and stuff. So those work really well for a visual learner. A lot of visual learners like workbooks and worksheets to do, and my daughter really loves doing them. She loves all sorts of different worksheets. They don't always have to have color. As long as they have pictures and are engaging, she's all for it. She loves that kind of thing, and she will sit and do many worksheets. I know sometimes workbooks get bad rap in homeschool, but honestly, some kids really love them, and they learn a lot from them. Another thing with my visual learner, videos work really well for her. And even my auditory learner, we do a lot of videos in general in my homeschool, but for her, it just helps her like grasp concepts. If we're talking about a sloth or something, for example, if she can actually see videos of a sloth and their behavior, like that just makes it click so much more for her, because it's like it makes it real life for her. I have also found that literature-based learning has worked really well for her, and that's because she loves reading picture books, and she'll climb in my lap, she'll sit next to me, she loves looking at the pictures, and she loves pointing out things in the story, in the pictures as well, and that really helps keep her engaged. For those older visual learners, note-taking can be a really good thing for them when they're listening to information, seeing them on the page. They also may like a schedule written out and being able to see exactly what their responsibilities are for the day. Depends on the kid. That's going to be a preference. Also, for older visual learners, you're going to want to use a lot of visual demonstrations. So they work really well with like charts and graphs and pictures, explaining things like different models of what they're trying to grasp. Like a math curriculum that has every step broken down visually is very helpful. PowerPoint presentations or posters and that kind of thing are going to be a really good thing for them. The last learning style I have is a kinesthetic learner, and this is going to be often the most challenging type of learner to really engage. And that's just because they are movers and shakers. They love to move their body. They don't love to sit still, and they have to move. Like it's in their body, like they're programmed that way. What's cool about kinesthetic learners though is that they experience the world so fully with all of their senses all at once. They are so engaged to their surroundings. They love to use all 5 senses to really explore everything. They're very experimental and they like to just do things to see what happens, which is a really cool thing about them. So when teaching a kinesthetic learner, what I have found is the best thing is something hands-on, which is kind of a given. So you're going to want to use curriculums and resources that have a lot of manipulatives, that they can actually like move the concepts with their hands. As many of the senses as you can engage when they're learning, the better. The other tip that I have for you is to allow them to move. Allow them to move about the room when you're doing read alouds. Allow them to use Play-Doh with their hands, something that they can kind of concentrate on in movement. Will help them retain that story that you're reading or the lesson you're reading a lot better. If your curriculum isn't as hands-on, there are definitely ways that you can sneak that in by getting creative. Instead of just having them read their sentences out of the book, if you're teaching them to read, you could put the sentences on note cards and have them jump from note card to note card as they read. You could have them do jump ropes or different Simon Says games or something as they read. You could bounce balls when you're doing math facts or something. There's a lot of different ways that you can sneak that learning in and engage them so much better. Something else I've noticed about my kinesthetic learner, and I think a lot of kinesthetic learners, is that the attention span isn't super long. And so I have found that short and effective lessons are the best way to go for him. So I try to keep things short and sweet with him and where he can really get that focus time in and then move on. These kids are also going to be the kids that love doing science experiments, hands-on activities that they can do, like building things or just something that really fully engages their movement is going to be stuff that you want to incorporate more often. I've also noticed that he loves to tinker with things and just try to figure things out. Often it's hard to get instructions out before he's already jumping in. And that's very common with kinesthetic learners. They often don't pay as close to attention as to the instructions, and they just want to like do and figure it out as they go, which I try to let him do as much as possible. I think that kinesthetic learners, as they get older, sometimes that kind of changes into another learning style. But if they do stay kinesthetic as they get older, I find that the best kinds of stuff for them to study are hands-on things. Trades, tinker with the car engine, learn how to build an engine, learn how to build a rocket and launch that. I find that a lot of curriculums kind of phase out of that kinesthetic learning aspect as they go up in levels and get to that older group. I'm not sure why that is. I wish there were more kinesthetic curriculums for middle school and high schoolers, but you just have to kind of find those gems and hold on to them and then just incorporate any of that where you can on your own. And this is why I say that teaching a kinesthetic learner is going to probably be the hardest, just because you're going to have to put more effort into that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video about learning styles and my 3 that I have and kind of what I've noticed about them and things that I've done to kind of cater to that a little bit in their homeschool education. If you guys have different learners and you have other tips or advice or anything, please leave them down below for all of us to take a look at. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.